The Croth came in silence, blotting out the sky with their warships. For centuries, they had rolled over one civilization after another, an empire built on submission and obedience. They were a race of conquerors who had forgotten what resistance looked like. Their fleets numbered in the thousands, their weapons capable of glassing a city in seconds, their armies trained to crush rebellion before it even began. To the Croth, Earth was just another world, another species to be broken, filed into their records, shackled into their endless empire. They had seen humans from a distance, studied our wars, our petty conflicts, our divided politics, and they assumed they knew the outcome. But the Croth did not understand one thing. Humanity never stays broken. The first strike. It began in Cairo. The Croth descended with precision, their dropships cutting through the sky, plasma, artillery, vaporizing the pyramids, as a show of dominance. Millions fled, and in their terror the Croth expected surrender. Instead, an old man climbed onto a rooftop with a rusted rifle that had belonged to his grandfather. He had seen invaders before, though none from the stars. His hands shook as he lifted the weapon, but his aim was steady. He fired one bullet. That bullet tore through the air, struck a Croth officer square in the eye, and the alien toppled to the dust. The old man didn't survive the return fire. But in that moment, something was lit, a spark across the world. Humanity had just declared its refusal to kneel. In Warsaw, a mother scavenged explosives from a ruined factory, wiring them to a stolen delivery drone. She kissed her children, whispered "for your tomorrow," and sent the drone flying into the heart of a Croth walker. The explosion lit the night. In Sao Paulo, street gangs turned into freedom fighters overnight. Pistols, knives, Molotov cocktails against plasma cannons and walkers. It was suicide. But they did it anyway. The Croth burned the city. The gangs kept fighting. The first hours of the invasion weren't coordinated. They weren't planned. They weren't strategic. They were instinct. Across every continent, people refused to kneel. General Hassan, in the smoking ruins of Giza, among shattered temples and burning neighborhoods, one woman emerged as more than just another survivor. General Amina Hassan had once commanded the Egyptian army. Her career was over long before the invasion. Bureaucratic politics had chewed her up, retired her, silenced her voice. She was 58 years old, weary, scarred, but unyielding. When the Croth landed, she picked up a rifle, and the soldiers who had once served under her came crawling out of the rubble to follow her again. She spoke not like a general, but like a mother of humanity itself. We are not soldiers anymore. We are the last wall. If we fall, humanity falls with us. Do not think of victory. Think of standing. Standing, so the Croth will know we are not prey. Her words carried beyond Egypt. Smugglers ferried them across the Mediterranean. Survivors broadcast them on hijacked radios. Soon, across continents, whispers of General Hassan became a rallying cry. The ghost broadcast. The Croth struck not only with weapons, but with silence. They severed cables, hijacked satellites, burned data centers. They had enslaved enough worlds to know the first rule: break the voice, break the spirit. But they underestimated humans. In Mexico City, a young engineer named Samuel Torres refused to give up his tools. Working in the ruins of a collapsed university lab, he jury-rigged a transmitter out of Croth scrap, a car battery, and salvaged servers. One night, his face flickered onto hijacked screens across Earth. Dirty, bloodied, lit only by a flickering lamp. His voice trembled, but did not break. They think we are weak. They think we will kneel. Let them come. Let them burn the sky. Humanity has crawled out of every hellfire it has ever faced. You will never erase what we are. You will never kill what we are. The Croth found him within days. They dragged him into the streets, executed him in front of cameras, and broadcast his death. But the broadcast didn't end with his execution. His words had already spread, duplicated 1,000 times, carved into walls, whispered in tunnels, scrawled in blood across broken cities. You will never kill what we are. The Croth had tried to erase him. Instead, they had made him immortal. London's fire, The Kroth needed to make an example. They chose London. Occupying it was easy. Their warships floated above. Their patrols marched through empty streets. They declared curfew, broadcast obedience codes, and warned humanity what defiance would bring. But humans had learned something the Kroth did not understand. Desperation breeds creativity. On the second night, the power grid went dark. London plunged into silence. The Kroth assumed it was sabotage and prepared countermeasures. They didn't realize the blackout was the signal. Resistance fighters struck from every shadow. Snipers on rooftops. Explosives hidden in sewers. Civilians turning kitchen knives and gasoline into weapons. 1,000 tiny cuts on an empire used to rolling over planets without resistance. The Kroth commander sneered at the primitive rebellion. He ordered his men to burn the city to ash. But by dawn, he was dead, dragged into the Thames by resistance fighters, his alien corpse floating among the wreckage of burning ships. And London still burned, yes, but with the fires of freedom. The world awakens. The Kroth began to understand. Humanity was not like the others. Other species knelt. They always knelt. Even the proudest civilizations fell when faced with overwhelming firepower. But humans? Humans bit back. With broken glass, with fists, with rocks. Children spat in the faces of their conquerors. Old men threw Molotov cocktails from rooftops. Entire towns went silent, not because they surrendered, but because every last inhabitant had fought until they were ash. The Kroth did not know what to call this madness. But humanity had a word for it. Defiance. General Hassan's march. From Giza, General Hassan led survivors into the Sinai Desert. It was madness, no supplies, no vehicles, just scattered fighters. But they walked anyway, and on the march they sang old songs, carrying the names of the fallen like banners. By the time they reached the Red Sea, their numbers had tripled. Farmers, mechanics, children, anyone who refused to kneel. Hassan no longer commanded an army. She commanded a movement. Her voice carried across the world in whispers and stolen transmissions. Do not fight for victory. Fight for memory. Let the Kroth know that when they came for Earth, we stood. We bled. We did not kneel. The spark that would become a firestorm. In the rubble of Tokyo, survivors strung power cables through subway tunnels and turned train cars into mobile barracks. In Nairobi, entire villages vanished into the forests, striking the Kroth at night and disappearing by dawn. In Los Angeles, gangs turned highways into ambush zones, burying explosives under asphalt. Everywhere, the Kroth expected obedience. Everywhere, they found teeth. And so, Earth became something new. It was no longer a world under conquest. It was a battlefield. It was the birthplace of a legend. It was the spark of a firestorm the Kroth could not extinguish. The weight of ashes. The first fires of resistance had burned brightly. But with fire comes smoke, and with smoke comes choking. By the second month of the invasion, Earth was a graveyard. The Kroth tightened their grip. Cities became prisons. Villages became bait for reprisals. Their ships scorched the soil, turning farmlands to glass, forcing famine on the survivors. They executed rebels publicly, hanging human bodies from towers as reminders. For other worlds, these tactics had always worked. Terror ground rebellions into dust. Fear bought obedience. But Earth was different. In the ruins of Sao Paulo, mothers carried their executed sons and buried them at night, then returned in the morning to plant bombs in the same streets. In Moscow, the Kroth strung human corpses from lampposts as a warning. The next morning, every lamppost in the city bore not corpses, but Kroth heads, severed in the night by human hands. Fear was supposed to break humanity. Instead, it welded them together. The forest wars. In Africa, the jungles became war zones. Whole villages melted into the trees, leaving behind empty huts. Kroth patrols marched in and never marched out again. Amina Hassan's name spread like wind in dry grass. The Desert General, they called her now. In the shadows of Kilimanjaro, she met with Maasai warriors who carried spears older than the Kroth Empire itself. In Congo, children carried grenades like toys, refusing to leave their parents' side. The Kroth responded with orbital bombardments. They erased forests, burning them into cinders visible from space. But the humans adapted, digging into caves, rivers, and tunnels. One Kroth commander, frustrated, spat in his alien tongue. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like the earth itself. Kill one, and 10 more crawl out of the mud. And he was right. The mountain strongholds. In Afghanistan, resistance fighters carved tunnels into the mountains. From hidden caves, they launched ambushes on Kroth patrols. Every valley became a trap. Every ridgeline bristled with stolen alien weapons. The Kroth called it the Thorn Nest. They tried to burn the mountains, tried to collapse the tunnels, but the humans simply dug deeper. In one infamous battle at Bamiyan, an entire Kroth division was lured into the valley, ambushed by improvised artillery hidden in caves. The Kroth commander sent a desperate call to his fleet. This world does not bow. It bites. The ocean ghosts. At sea, humanity struck back in ways the Kroth had not anticipated. Old submarines, long retired, were dragged out of rusting docks, patched together with desperation, and armed with stolen alien warheads. One such sub, the USS Virginia, half sunken and half dead, resurfaced in the Atlantic with a skeleton crew. They intercepted a Kroth carrier group, crawling under sonar like a ghost. When they surfaced, they fired their last torpedoes at point-blank range. 3 Kroth cruisers exploded, lighting the horizon. The Virginia's crew did not survive, but their last transmission did. For Earth. The oceans became haunted waters. Fishing boats rammed patrol vessels. Cargo ships served as floating bombs. Humans had turned the sea into a graveyard the Kroth dared not cross. Samuel Torres Echo. Though Samuel Torres was long dead, his ghost broadcast lived on. His recordings were replayed across resistance channels, spliced into Kroth transmissions, even scratched into metal scraps for future generations to read. His voice became a weapon. The Kroth tried to erase it, but every time they silenced one broadcast, 5 more erupted somewhere else. Amina Hassan herself carried his words with her. Before every battle, she whispered them to her soldiers. They think we will kneel. Show them we stand. Psychological war. The Kroth adapted. They were not fools. They began to study humans not just as enemies, but as a species. They saw what drove us: memory, grief, pride. So they tried to use it against us. They captured families, forcing parents to betray children on live broadcasts. They burned schools, libraries, churches, symbols of culture, hoping to erase what made humans fight. But this, too, backfired. When the Kroth burned Notre Dame in Paris, the flames lit a resistance that swept across Europe. Thousands of fighters rallied under the banner of the burning cathedral, swearing vengeance until Paris was free. When the Kroth desecrated the Kaaba in Mecca, millions across the Middle East took up arms. Men and women who had never held weapons swore to fight until the invaders were drowned in their blood. When the Kroth executed monks in Tibet, villages across Asia rose overnight. Entire provinces turned into insurgent networks. Every attempt to break humanity only bound it tighter. The Council of Shadows. By the 3rd month, scattered resistance groups began to unify. Representatives from across the continents gathered secretly, deep in the ruins of Istanbul. Farmers from Argentina, engineers from Tokyo, Maasai warriors, Russian partisans, American Marines, priests, gang leaders, even children, carrying messages from their towns. At the head of the council sat General Amina Hassan. She did not speak of victory. She spoke of survival. The Kroth have ruled the stars because no one dared resist them. Let Earth be the first. Let them fear our name. We may not live to see it, but our defiance will echo through the galaxy. And so the resistance became more than scattered uprisings. It became an alliance. The first true global unity humanity had ever known, not forged in peace, but in blood. The learning curve. Humans learn fast. faster than the Croth expected. Stolen plasma rifles were reverse engineered. Croth drones were hacked by teenagers using salvaged laptops. Farmers learned to forge armor from scrap. In the jungles of Vietnam, guerrillas welded Croth parts to their motorcycles, creating hybrid war machines. In Detroit, factories once long abandoned roared back to life, forging weapons from alien scrap. The Croth had studied humanity's past wars, expecting chaos and division. Instead, they witnessed something terrifying: adaptation. Hassan's speech. When the Croth broadcasted mass executions in Rome, humanity trembled. For the first time, morale faltered. General Hassan knew this was the breaking point. So she sent her message, hijacking every signal she could. Her face, lined with age and war, appeared across the planet. Her voice cracked but did not waver. They burn our cities. They kill our children. They think we will kneel. But let them listen. Rome has fallen before, but from its ashes, empires rose. London burned before and it rose. Moscow starved before and it rose. Humanity does not die, it endures. And we will endure them. Stand. Stand not for victory, but so the stars themselves will remember. Earth did not kneel. Her words became fire. Across the world, resistance surged. The Croth realization. For the first time in their long history, the Croth admitted something unthinkable. Conquest might not be possible. One Croth strategist recorded in frustration, "We have burned their cities. We have starved them. We have broken every tactic of war we know, and still they rise." Humanity fights not for conquest, not for survival alone. They fight because they refuse not to. The empire had never faced an enemy like this, the binding. And so humanity bound itself together, under fire, in blood, in grief. From Cairo to Kyoto, from the Sahara to the Amazon, one truth spread across the ruins of Earth. Children learned to fight beside their parents. Farmers forged weapons beside engineers. Soldiers carried civilians on their backs, and civilians stood as shields for soldiers. It was no longer nation against nation, tribe against tribe. It was humanity, whole, for the first time in history. The Croth had sought to break Earth. Instead, they had welded it into something unshakable. The gathering storm. By the 6th month of the invasion, Earth was a battlefield without borders. Every continent bled. Every ocean burned. The Croth expected humanity to fracture. Instead, the opposite had happened. Resistance cells unified into a single burning chain across the planet. The Council of Shadows had grown into the Council of Earth, a war network binding every survivor into one pulse. At its center stood General Amina Hassan. Gray streaks lined her hair. Her uniform was ragged, but her eyes burned brighter than ever. She carried no crown, no title, only the weight of the unbroken, the plan. For months, the Croth flagship, the Zerthal Dominion, hovered above New York like a god of war. It was the symbol of their conquest, its shadow falling across the ruins of Manhattan. Destroy it, and humanity would prove the impossible, that gods could bleed. The plan was madness. They would gather every scrap of stolen Croth tech, every hack drone, every bomb forged in desperation, and launch a single coordinated strike. Not to win the war, but to etch defiance into the stars. Hassan's voice carried through hidden speakers, radios, scratched graffiti on walls. We may not live to see victory, but our children will live to know we fought. And if we fall, let the galaxy remember, humanity never knelt. The march to New York. The resistance moved like rivers converging. From the ruins of Chicago, columns of survivors dragged artillery made from scavenged Croth plating. From Boston, children carried ammunition in school bags, walking beside their parents. From Washington, scarred veterans marched with civilians, chanting the same word over and over, unbroken. The Croth saw them coming. They laughed. To them, it looked like a desperate swarm of ants crawling toward fire. But ants bite hardest when the nest is burning. The battle begins. The strike began at dawn. Human artillery opened fire from the Jersey side, hurling shells crafted from melted skyscraper steel. Croth shields flickered under the barrage. From the rivers, submarines surfaced, launching their final torpedoes at orbiting patrol ships. They detonated in blooms of fire, dragging Croth cruisers into the Hudson. From the sky, hack drones swarmed, buzzing like angry locusts, diving into Croth armor with stolen warheads strapped to their frames. New York lit up like a second sun. The Croth answered with annihilation. Plasma beams cut through entire city blocks. Skyscrapers collapsed in molten fire. Thousands died in minutes. But the resistance did not break. For every line cut down, another surged forward. The last push. At the heart of the chaos, General Hassan herself led the charge. She carried a stolen Croth plasma rifle slung over her shoulder, its weight dragging, but she moved as if carrying the entire earth behind her. Beside her marched priests carrying banners of burned cloth, children carrying rifles too big for their hands, elders who should have been in graves, but who chose to stand. The plan was simple and suicidal. Breach the flagship's shield long enough to deliver the final strike. The weapon was not elegant. It was a nuclear core wrapped in Croth tech, carried on the back of a dying tank. They called it the Dawnfire. It rumbled through the streets, shielded by walls of flesh and fury. Hassan's broadcast. As the Croth unleashed their full fury, Hassan knew the world might not live to see what happened next. She activated the transmitter strapped to her chest, broadcasting on every frequency the resistance could hijack. Her face appeared in shattered shop windows, on flickering phone screens, even on Croth monitors. This is Amina Hassan, daughter of Earth. We were told to kneel. We were told to break. But hear me now, no empire, no conqueror, no army will ever make humanity bow. If we burn standing. If we die unbroken. Let the stars remember this day, the day Earth stood. Her words spread faster than fire. Across the planet, survivors whispered them as last prayers. Across the galaxy, Croth outposts intercepted the signal, stunned by a species that defied extinction itself. The shield falls. The Dawnfire reached the edge of the Croth flagship's shadow. Its shields glowed, shimmering like a second sky. Resistance fighters threw everything they had, rockets, rifles, even their bodies, against the barrier. For hours it held. And then, in a scream of light, it cracked. The humans surged forward, pouring their last breath into the breach. Hassan herself climbed atop the tank, her rifle blazing, covering the final crawl of the machine as it dragged the Dawnfire beneath the flagship. The explosion. Time slowed. The Croth flagship's weapons turned downward. Plasma charged to obliterate the humans below. And then white fire. The Dawnfire detonated, its nuclear heart ripping through the Croth shields, tearing into alien steel. The flagship groaned like a wounded beast, its black hull splitting in half as fire devoured its core. The shock waves swept across Manhattan, toppling what remained of its towers. The river boiled. The sky turned white. And then silence. The Zerthal Dominion, pride of the Croth fleet, fell from the heavens and shattered into the Atlantic. The aftermath. The Croth were not defeated. Their fleets still circled the earth. Their armies still burned its soil. But something had shifted. For the first time in their history, the Croth had lost a flagship. For the first time, they had been forced to bleed. And across the galaxy, whispers spread. The humans stood. On Earth, the survivors buried their dead in the ruins of New York. They sang in broken voices. Hymns and anthems mingled into one. They wept. But they did not kneel. Hassan's end. General Amina Hassan did not live to see the Dawnfire's triumph. She was found at the edge of the blast, her body burned, her rifle still in her hands. They carved her last words into stone, into steel, into memory. Earth does not kneel. Legacy. The war was not over, but the tide had turned. The Croth, for all their power, now feared humanity. Other enslaved worlds heard the signal. In the dark corners of the galaxy, rebellions stirred. Earth had become a beacon, broken, scarred, but unbowed. And somewhere across the stars, the Croth leaders whispered the word that had come to define this war. Unbroken